Okay, it's game time. Hasta luego.
What up, it's Shankster94, also known as THEGAMERSHANKSTER, and welcome to my brand new weapon review of Resident Evil 7 Biohazard, the latest addition to the Resident Evil game franchise, as of February 2017. So just so you know, this game is still pretty new, and hasn't even been out a month as of this moment. So as a pre-warning, this video may contain spoilers. You have been warned. I would also like to mention that I always start off these weapon reviews with some introductions and personal opinions about the game, so if you're impatient and want to get straight to the review, please go to the time code indicated on the screen here. Just saying though, you might be missing some information that would answer some questions you may have after you watch the review. So, Resident Evil 7 makes a dramatic change from the past few main games in terms of gameplay mechanics. The most obvious change, as you can see here, is the switch from over-the-shoulder perspective to first-person perspective. This brings about a whole new experience to players who have played previous titles in the series. Unless, of course, you're a huge fan of the series like myself and have played the Gun Survivor spin-off titles, then you'll know that first-person isn't exactly new to the franchise. It's just that this is the first main series title to use that aspect. Now, in my personal opinion, Resident Evil 7 is one of the best games to come out since Resident Evil 4. Close contenders were Revelations and Revelations 2, but 7 hit it home for me. Not only does 7 bring back the horror genre in spades, but it also throws back to the classic games in many ways. A quick example would be the fact that they bring back the save rooms with item boxes, as you can see here, and the music that goes along with it. And of course the typewriter, but in this case the typewriter's successor, a tape recorder. Now I could go into detail about the numerous throwbacks, but that's not what this video is about. You guys are here to see all the weapons that this game has to offer. So the weapons system in this game also throws back to the more classic games. For example, some weapons require you to solve puzzles before you can obtain them. They also remove the upgrade system from the modern games, so all the weapons you receive are as is. And of course, putting to rest the shooter action genre and resurrecting the survival horror genre, there aren't a ton of weapons in this game, so hopefully this review won't be too long. So, I think that will conclude my explanation of some of the game's features and my personal opinions about it. Now I'll walk you through what's going to happen in this video. For my dedicated subscribers, you probably already know my style of reviewing pretty well. For you newcomers, however, this is how it's going to go. First and foremost, this is important. I don't want you guys to indulge in the word review too much. None of my weapon reviews have ever been super detailed. What I'm really doing here is simply showing you all of the weapons in the game. So basically, I'm just showcasing the weapons, more or less. But I still use the word review in my titles of my videos because I'm doing a little more than just simply showcasing the weapon. So here's my weapon review procedure. First, I find a place in the game, such as this, with no enemies around in the immediate area, at which point I have acquired all the weapons with a decent amount of ammo for each weapon category. So I'm going to go into the item box and show you here. I got all the weapons of this game, and a bunch of ammo associated with them, as you can see. So yeah, I'm ready to go with this weapon review. So anyway, I find this place first, have all the weapons, and then I split all the categories and typically start with the non-firearms or melee weapons, if you will, when I start my weapon reviews. Then I proceed with the firearms after the melee weapons. Within each category of weaponry, I review the weapons in order of appearance in the game. This has been the way it's been for a while. When reviewing a single weapon, I first introduce it by pronouncing its name and reading its description. Speaking of which, they brought back weapon descriptions! Another throwback to the older games, so that's pretty awesome. Anyway, after reading the description, I'll either have something to say about the weapon, or I'll usually proceed with testing the weapon out. However, I'm going to add a new step for this weapon review, so this goes to my dedicated subscribers if you're listening. After reading the description of the weapon, I will then explain where to locate the weapon in the game through a video demonstration and speaking over it. This is something I realized would be beneficial as to prevent questions about it later, such as people asking, where do you find this weapon or whatnot, if I fail to mention it in some way or form, but adding this new step to my weapon reviews should prevent that question. After that, I will proceed with my next step in my usual procedure, which is testing the weapon out. The reason I like a place with no enemies is so they don't interrupt me in this process. I test the weapon out by shooting a few rounds, and then adding my own style of special effects by slow-moing the final shot. After shooting the weapon, I then reload the weapon to showcase its reload animation. With more modern games accurately showing the mechanics of a firearm, I always make sure to fully empty the magazine or the clip or whatever it uses. Basically empty the weapon before I reload it, as to give a more realistic visual of the reload animation. This ends the process of testing it out, and then I announce a specific enemy I desire to test it on. I try to keep the same enemy for the whole weapon category I'm showcasing, as to give you guys some comparison of damage reports. This is why I'm not very detailed with my weapon reviews, because I'm not too interested in researching enemy health points or weapon damage points. I just like to compare the initial amount of shots for each weapon in their respective categories. Anyway, when I try the weapon out on a specific enemy, I typically aim for the chest area so I have an easier time hitting them, and because that's the area of the body with the widest range of damage rates. It's going to give you the most average damage rate out of all the areas to hit the body. I personally recommend, however, you aim for the head, as that obviously has a higher damage rate than the body does, and you'll save a lot more ammo if you go for the head. But for my weapon review, it's always the chest that I aim for. After defeating the enemy, I read back the amount of shots it took, and then I may say a couple more things about the weapon before moving on to the next one. Once I complete this process with all the weapons, that will officially end the weapon review, and then I'll have my final say and announcements for future videos. Alrighty people, so now you definitely know how my weapon reviews work. So if you stuck around this long, I greatly appreciate your patience. But wait no more, because it's finally time to proceed with my brand new weapon review of Resident Evil 7. Let's go! Alrighty, to kick off this brand new weapon review, we're gonna start with the usual, the melee non-firearm weapons. And in this category, I usually start with the knives. So we're gonna start with that. So the first one is the knife, or what I consider the pocket knife, as you can see here. And this is also really cool about Resident Evil 7. They bring back like the check feature from classic games to where you could look at it close up like this and even rotate it. But anyway, to describe the knife, a folding knife. So the knife happens to be a mandatory item in the game. You can't proceed without it. So no matter what, it's going to end up in your inventory. Where you get it exactly is when you meet the deputy at the window after coming out of the first save room and talking to Zoe. So, after conversing with the deputy for a little bit, he will give you his pocket knife, and from then on there, you have it. And it has a variety of uses, not only as a weapon, but it can be used to break open boxes, and there's actually a part where you absolutely need it. And that's to open the garage to meet the deputy. Alrighty, so here's the pocket knife, and when you have it equipped. So let's go ahead and test it out. Alright, and that's the thing with melee weapons, or practically with all weapons in the game. You can aim weapons, but you could also use them without aiming. And for some weapons, such as this, there'll be two different animations with it. Alrighty, so there's the folding knife. Now I'm going to go ahead and test it on an enemy. Now here's the thing with this specific weapon review that I didn't mention in the introduction. Sure, I usually test the weapons on a variety of enemies in my weapon reviews, but for this weapon review specifically, I'm going to try to test all of the weapons on a single enemy. There's not a lot of enemies in Resident Evil 7, if you didn't know. Honestly, it has the least amount of different enemies I've ever seen in a Resident Evil game. Because of that fact, there's only one regular enemy. It's these things called molded, and they have a decent amount of health. So they will be good for practically all of the weapons in this game, especially if I go for the chest area. These things are meant to be defeated by hitting their head as much as you can. They're defeated much faster if you take off their head with a decent amount of shots. But of course, for this weapon review, I'm going to go for the body again, so we're going to see how badly this turns out. But anyway, to test the folding knife on a molded. Alright, so I tried very hard to make sure I kept count of how many slashes that took. I may be off by a few slashes, but I'm pretty sure it took a total of 40 slashes. 40. So the pocket knife is either incredibly weak or the molded is incredibly strong. But yeah, it's a little bit of both. And plus the fact that I'm in normal mode, which I forgot to mention, I'll be testing all of the weapons in normal mode to give you even more of an average damage rate other than easy and other than madhouse difficulty. But anyway, 40 freaking slashes. Now, I'm gonna do something with this weapon and any other weapon that may have this kind of feature. Now I'm gonna test how many stabs it takes when doing it like this instead. This is gonna be crazy, but I have the health to do it. Okay, so it's possible not all of those were exactly chest hits. Some of those might have been some head hits. Regardless though, that only took, I'm pretty sure that took around 21 stabs. So the stabbing may do some more damage than a regular slashing does. But in all honesty, I don't think you should use the knife as a weapon too often. It's really good for breaking open boxes, more or less. Alrighty then, well, I was crazy enough to do that for you guys, but I've always been. If you look back at all my weapon reviews, I'm testing knives on enemies. Alrighty then, that is it for the first weapon of my weapon review, the folding knife.
Right here. There should be enough, right?
If we make him fast enough, my father and Luke...
Now for the next weapon, the survival knife. A different type of knife altogether. A survival knife for enthusiasts. It still looks usable. Alrighty then. So the first appearance of the survival knife happens to be on the tape that Evelyn wants Mia to look at that depicts all that happened before the shipwreck. So the survival knife happens to be right in Mia's inventory from the start. So it's the first time it appears. However, you can get it again with Mia after watching the tape, and its exact location is after you unlock the hatch with the lug wrench in the elevator. You want to climb up to the second floor, and it's right there in front of you on the floor. So that is where to find the survival knife after the tape. And then, after you're done controlling Mia and you control Ethan again, of course, it will be in Ethan's item box. Alright, so here's me equipping it. So let's go ahead and test it out. Alright, so used exactly in the same way as the folding knife. So this should be interesting. Hopefully it's more powerful than the folding knife on those molded. Alrighty then, so that only took 16 slashes to defeat a molded with a survival knife. So it's obviously way more powerful than the folding knife. But yeah, once again, his limbs and his head did get in a couple of those slashes. But 16 is still way dramatically different than 40. So, yeah, we all know for a fact that the survival knife is a lot more powerful than the folding knife. It's made for survival. Alright, so now let's test the stabbing motion on the molded. Alright, so only 13 stabs with the survival knife to take down a molded. Slightly less than the slashing motion, so proves my theory. Why wouldn't it though? It is a survival knife after all. Alrighty, that is it for the survival knife, as well as all knives. Now to proceed to other melee type weapons, the first one is the axe. An old axe. It's rusted, but you can still use it to defend yourself. Alright, so let's test it out. Alrighty, so it's just a swinging weapon, just like the knife, pretty much. Alright, so now I'm going to go to the actual fight where we use it. I'll see you there. Alright, so here's the part in the main game where you would acquire the axe. Right here. Punch her with it. Alrighty.